Dolly Parton is the woman who smiles for the world. But today, at 80, the Queen of Country is facing her darkest hour. Since burying her husband, Carl Dean, in 2025, the silence in her massive estate has become deafening. Without him, she has realized a terrifying truth. She is truly alone. There are no children to comfort her, no grandchildren to fill the empty rooms. For the first time, she is revealing the tragedy behind that empty nursery. A secret surgery, a deep depression, and the moment she almost ended it all. With Carl gone, who is left to hold her hand? This is the heartbreaking story of Dolly's final solitude, the love story that started it all. To understand the depth of the loss, we must first understand the depth of the love that created the dream. Dolly Parton's life has been lived on stage, under the blinding lights of fame, but her heart has always lived in the shadows, where man the world barely knows. Carl Dean, they met on the very first day Dolly arrived in Nashville in 1964. She was 18 years old, fresh off the bus from the Smoky Mountains, smelling of ambition and hairspray. He was 21, driving a white Chevy pickup truck, smelling of asphalt and hard work. He saw her outside the wishy-washy laundromat. He didn't ask for an autograph. He didn't ask if she could sing. He looked at her and said, "You're going to get sunburned in that outfit." Dolly famously says that while everyone else looked at her face or her body, Carl looked at her eyes. It was instant. It was primal. They married 2 years later, in 1966. But this wasn't a Hollywood marriage. Carl Dean hated the spotlight. He told her early on, "I love you, Dolly, but I don't love the show business." So they made a pact, a sacred agreement that would last for nearly 60 years. Dolly would belong to the world. But at home, she would just be Dolly Dean. They built a sanctuary in Brentwood, Tennessee, a massive estate hidden from the prying eyes of the paparazzi. And in those early years, that house was filled with dreams. Like any young couple in the South in the 1960s, they assumed that marriage meant children. Dolly came from a family of 12 kids. 12. She grew up rocking babies on her hip before she could even read. She knew how to change a diaper in the dark. She knew how to soothe a fever. Motherhood wasn't just a role for her. It was her nature. It was in her DNA. Carl and Dolly talked about it constantly. They picked out names. Dolly has revealed that they had a name picked out for a girl. Carla, named after Carl. Imagine that. A little girl running around the halls of that big house, singing with her mother's voice and carrying her father's quiet strength. They dreamed of a house filled with noise. They dreamed of Christmas mornings with their own children opening presents. They didn't just want it. They expected it. They thought it was inevitable. They thought that because they had so much love to give, God would naturally give them someone to pour it into. But as the 1960s turned into the 1970s, and Dolly's career skyrocketed into the stratosphere, a quiet silence began to settle over their personal life. Every month brought a new disappointment. Every negative test was a small heartbreak. But they were young. They were busy. They told themselves there was still time. Dolly was touring the world, writing Jolene and I Will Always Love You. She was becoming an icon. But while she was conquering the charts, her body was quietly, secretly waging a war against her dreams. She started feeling pain. Deep, pelvic pain that would double her over in her dressing room before a show. She ignored it. She pushed through it. She was Dolly Parton. She didn't complain. She didn't know that the pain was a warning. She didn't know that the dream of little Carla was slipping away day by day, month by month. The surgery that stole the dream. By the early 1980s, the pain could no longer be ignored. Dolly Parton was at the absolute peak of her powers. She had starred in 9 to 5. She was a movie star. She was a mogul. But physically, she was collapsing. On tour, she would bleed unexpectedly. She would faint from exhaustion. The diagnosis was one that millions of women struggle with in silence: endometriosis. But Dolly's case wasn't just mild discomfort. It was aggressive. It was destructive. The lining of her uterus was growing outside of it, scarring her organs, twisting her insides. She tried treatments. She tried medication. She prayed. But in 1982, at the age of 36, the doctors gave her the news that shattered her world. They told her that her condition was critical. They told her that if they didn't operate, she could die. And the operation they needed to perform was a partial hysterectomy. Let that word sink in. Hysterectomy. For a woman who had spent 15 years dreaming of naming a baby Carla, that word was a guillotine. It meant the end. It meant never. It wasn't a choice anymore. It wasn't about timing. It was a biological finality. Dolly went into the surgery with a brave face. She joked with the nurses. She wore her full makeup into the operating room because she didn't want to look like a victim. But when she woke up in the recovery room, in the sterile quiet of the hospital, the reality hit her like a physical blow. She was empty. The possibility of carrying Carl's child was gone. The nursery in her mind was closed forever. She went home to recover. But the physical recovery was nothing compared to the emotional fallout. Suddenly, she was 36, childless, and facing the rest of her life without the one thing she thought defined her womanhood. She looked at Carl, and she felt a crushing guilt. She felt she had failed him. He was the only son of his parents. The Dean family line ended with him. Because of her, there would be no grandson to carry his name. Dolly later said, "I felt like I was less of a woman. I felt like I had broken a promise to my husband, even though I couldn't help it." This is the part of the story that most people don't know. They see Dolly laughing on talk shows. They see the glitter. They don't see the woman who sat in her bedroom in 1982, weeping for the child she never met. She mourned Carla. She mourned the birthdays she wouldn't plan. She mourned the wedding dress she wouldn't pass down. It was a grief that had no body to bury. It was a grief of absence. And that grief, unexpressed and hidden from the public, began to rot inside her. It turned into a darkness that Dolly Parton had never known before. The sunny Dolly was about to enter the darkest night of her soul. The gun in the nightstand drawer. The years following the surgery, specifically from 1982 to 1984, are what Dolly calls her dark night of the soul. Outwardly, she was still the bubbly, unstoppable force of nature. She was filming The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. She was recording hits with Kenny Rogers. But privately, she was falling apart. The hysterectomy had thrown her into early menopause. Her hormones were crashing. Her emotions were erratic, combined with the grief of infertility. She spiraled into a deep clinical depression. She started binge eating to numb the pain. She gained weight, and in Hollywood, gaining weight is a sin. The tabloids were cruel. They called her fat. They mocked her appearance. She felt attacked from the outside and hollow on the inside. And then, to make matters worse, she had an affair of the heart. Dolly has been very private about this, but she admitted she fell in love with someone outside her marriage. It wasn't physical, but it was emotional, and it ended badly. The combination of the surgery, the guilt over Carl, the weight gain, and this broken emotional connection pushed her to the brink. There is a terrifying story that Dolly has shared only a few times. It was an afternoon in the early 80s. She was alone in her house. Carl was gone. The staff was gone. The silence was deafening. The pain in her heart was so intense she felt like she couldn't breathe. She sat on the edge of her bed. In the nightstand drawer, she kept a gun, a pistol for protection against intruders. She opened the drawer. She took the gun out. She held it in her hands. It was heavy. It was cold. She looked at it and thought, I could end this right now. I could stop the pain. She wasn't being dramatic. She was being logical. In that moment of absolute despair, death looked like relief. She sat there for a long time, weighing the gun against her life. And then a miracle happened, or maybe it was just coincidence. But Dolly believes it was God. Her little dog, Popeye, a Boston Terrier, came running into the room. The dog heard her movement. He jumped onto the bed. His paws scurried across the sheets. He nudged her hand. He licked her face. The sudden noise, the warmth of the dog, the unconditional love in his eyes, it snapped her out of the trance. She looked at the dog, and she looked at the gun. She put the gun down. She started to cry. She cried until she had no tears left. She prayed to God. She said, if you want me to stay, you have to show me the way, because I can't do this anymore. That moment was a turning point. She realized that she hadn't died on that operating table, so there must be a reason she was still here. She realized that her life had to mean something more than just being a mother. She had to find a new purpose. If she couldn't birth children, she had to find another way to mother them. She had to take all that love, all that nurturing energy that was dammed up inside her, and release it into the world. The mother of everyone. Dolly slowly clawed her way back from the depression. She made peace with her body. She made peace with Carl. And she began to look at her family. Dolly has 11 brothers and sisters. And they were starting to have children. Lots of children. Suddenly, Dolly wasn't just a childless woman. She was Aunt Granny. That's what her nieces and nephews call her. Aunt Granny. She realized she had a unique role to play. She wasn't a mother who had to discipline them or worry about their grades. She was a magical aunt, the fairy godmother. She was the one who bought them ponies, the one who built them a literal amusement park, Dollywood, the one who let them eat cookie dough. She poured her maternal instinct into them. Some of her younger siblings actually lived with her and Carl for years. She raised them. She sent them to school. She bought them their first cars. She realized that biology is not the only way to make a mother. Love makes a mother. Sacrifice makes a mother. She famously said, "I often think it just wasn't meant for me to have kids, so everybody's kids could be mine." This shift in perspective was profound. It transformed her pain into power. Instead of being bitter about the empty nursery, she opened the doors of her heart to the world. And she didn't just stop with her own blood relatives. She looked at the children of the world, especially the poor children, the forgotten children, the children like she used to be. She remembered her own father, Dolly Parton. He was the smartest man she ever knew, but he couldn't read or write. He had to drop out of school to work on the farm. She saw the shame in his eyes when he couldn't read the Bible. She saw how it limited his life. Dolly decided she wanted to honor him. She wanted to make him the father of something huge. So, in 1995, she launched the Imagination Library. It started small, just for the children in her home county in Tennessee. The idea was simple. Every child would get a free book in the mail every month, from the day they were born until they turned 5. She wanted them to feel the excitement of running to the mailbox. She wanted them to own something. She paid for it herself. She thought it would be a nice local charity. She had no idea that this act of love, born from her own inability to have a child, would grow into a global movement. Today, the Imagination Library has gifted over 200 million books worldwide. 200 million. Think about that number. That is 200 million bedtime stories read by parents to children. That is 200 million moments of connection. That is millions of children learning to read because Dolly Parton cared about them. There's a beautiful story about her father. Before he died, he told her that the Imagination Library was the thing he was most proud of. Not her money, not her fame, but the fact that she was helping kids read. Dolly called him the father of the Imagination Library. She healed her father's shame, and she healed her own heart. She didn't have one child named Carla. She had millions of children named Sarah and James and Maria and David. She became the mother of a generation. The love that survived the silence. While Dolly was becoming the mother to the world, what about Carl? What about the man who stayed in the shadows? The lack of children could have destroyed their marriage. It destroys many. Resentment can build. You couldn't give me a son. You ended the family line. But Carl Dean is a rare man. He didn't blame Dolly. He held her. When she was depressed, he sat with her. When she was sick, he took care of her. He told her that she was enough. He told her that they were a family, just the two of them. Their relationship is one of the great mysteries and great triumphs of Hollywood. They have been married for nearly 60 years. They are complete opposites. Dolly is loud, glittery, and public. Carl is quiet, reclusive, and private. He has never walked a red carpet with her. He rarely sees her shows. But he is her rock. Dolly says that when she comes home, the wig comes off, the makeup comes off, and she is just Dolly. And he loves that Dolly the most. They found a way to fill the silence of the empty house. They bought an RV. They traveled the country together, just the two of them. They pack picnic lunches. They stay in motels. They live like teenagers in love. Dolly often jokes, "The secret to our marriage is that I'm gone all the time." But the real secret is deeper. The real secret is that they survived the fire together. They survived the infertility. They survived the depression. They survived the fame. They chose each other over and over again. At 80 years old, Dolly says she has no regrets. "I believe that God has a plan for everything," she says. "If I had had kids, I probably would have stayed home. I probably wouldn't be a star. I wouldn't have done all the things I've done." She sees her freedom as a gift now. Because she didn't have her own children to worry about, she could worry about everyone else's. She could fund vaccine research. She could build theme parks. She could write songs. She sacrificed a small family to build a global one. But sometimes in the quiet moments, you can still see the shadow of a scar. When she holds a baby in an interview, her face changes. There is a tenderness there, a longing that never quite goes away. She is the best mother the world never had. And perhaps that is why we love her so much. Because we feel that motherly love coming from her. She radiates it. She calls everyone honey or darling. She makes everyone feel safe. She turned her pain into a warm blanket for the world. The legacy of the empty nursery. Today, the nursery in Dolly's house is used for her nieces and nephews. It is filled with laughter when they visit. But at night, it is quiet. Dolly Parton is 80 years old. She looks back on her life with gratitude, not bitterness. She has accepted the trade she made with destiny. She recently said in an interview, "I'm old now, and I'm okay with it. I've done what I was supposed to do." She has prepared her legacy. She has ensured that the Imagination Library will continue long after she is gone. She has set up trust for her family. She has written her songs into history. But her greatest legacy is her spirit. The spirit of a woman who was broken, but refused to stay broken. The spirit of a woman who took the worst thing that happened to her, her inability to be a mother, and turned it into the best thing she ever did. She proved that you don't need to give birth to give life. When Dolly eventually leaves us, she won't leave behind a biological heir. There will be no Dolly Jr., but she will leave behind millions of children who learned to read because of her. She will leave behind millions of fans who felt loved by her. She will leave behind a world that is kinder, softer, and more colorful because she was in it. The empty nursery wasn't a curse. It was a catalyst. It forced her to expand her heart until it was big enough to hold us all. The Godmother of America. Dolly Parton is more than a singer. She is the Godmother of America. She taught us that it is okay to be different. She taught us that it is okay to be poor. And she taught us that it is okay to be broken. Because broken things can be mended with gold. Her story is a reminder to every woman who has struggled with infertility, with loss, with the feeling of not being enough. Dolly is proof that you are enough. You are whole. Your life has meaning. Your legacy is not defined by who you birth, but by who you help. As Dolly sits on her porch in Tennessee tonight, watching the fireflies with Carl, she isn't thinking about what she missed. She is thinking about what she gave. And she gave everything. What do you think? Do you believe Dolly's Imagination Library is a greater legacy than having her own children? And has her music or her charity touched your life? Let us know in the comments below. We love you, Dolly. Thank you for being our mom. This is the Seventh Lens. Thank you for watching.